Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Today, we have two very special speakers with me. We're going to be talking about the trends in the tech industry and especially focusing towards the role and the management role, why we need it, and what's their career path, what's next, basically. So first of all, the agenda for today is that we're gonna go with the opening, which is right now. I'm gonna introduce myself, and then later on we will move towards speaker introduction, and then into speaker panel discussion. Later on, you will have a chance. At any point, by the way, you will have a chance to ask the question. Put it on our comment or chat boxes, and we'll take your questions. And then afterwards is a closing. So first of all, I am Sarah Furkan. I'm the host of a webinar series called How I Did It, where I bring people from different roles and backgrounds live and we chat about it. I also bring on some hiring managers or potential hiring managers for that role to see and the expectations from their perspective. So today it's all about management. So I want to introduce my very first speaker, Asad, and I want to bring in Asad right now. So Asad and I also had a chance to work together, not closely in a single team, but at the same workplace. And he's an amazing like manager himself. He had a chance to work in and like not only in North America but also in different countries in Asia. So I don't want to introduce Asad. I would let Asad introduce himself. And I'm super excited that you are here, first of all. So, Asad, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the warm welcome and hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all virtually. I am Asad Mahmood. I recently moved to Rakuten, Canada after working for about 12 years in Rakuten, Japan, where I was working as an engineering manager. And when we talk about my experience in tech, I've been in some of the most sought after roles in the tech for about over 17 years. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to work in three different countries while managing one of the most diverse team, both in terms of engineering talent and the places of origin in the history of Rakuten. Some of the roles I have held are full stack developer, product manager, project manager, and engineering manager. And I think another very fortunate thing that I had was the opportunity to not only witness but also lead and participate in three of the major transformations in IT, which is one, adaptation of Scrum, like transitioning of from waterfall to Scrum Agile. The second one is transitioning to DevOps from the traditional developer versus ops culture. And the third one is migrating your IT infrastructure and assets to cloud. So that's pretty much a very brief summary. I think I would like Sarah to help me expand on this because otherwise I will take all the time.
Thank you so much, Asad, for first of all, as I said earlier, coming here and agreeing to speaking for this webinar. So, one thing that is stuck in my mind is that you said you hold all the sought after roles in the tech industry, starting from product management to engineering management, and you move back and forth. So my question to you is, which role did you find most interesting and like throughout your career? And I would like to know why.
I think this is a very tricky question because honestly I liked and enjoyed working in all the roles, and I think if you are an IT professional and you have this desire to work in different roles, then you only switch to those roles when you really want to work in those roles. And when you want to work in some specific role, it means you are solving problems. And when you are solving problems, you love it because at the end of the day, you are having this sense of accomplishment. when you solve something. But I think pure engineering or life of a coder is something which I really loved and enjoyed far more than anything else, because it's a very short feedback cycle. For example, you write code, you run it, and there your feedback is. Uh, the systems give you the feedback about the quality of your code. So I think, yeah, that's the one I enjoyed the most.
So what you're essentially telling is that you actually see the results of your contribution right away. So now my question is, okay, again moving towards, you are an engineering manager right now. What motivated you towards transitioning to become an engineering manager in a corporate, for example?
So I think when you work in corporate, sometimes as an engineer or as an individual contributor, you have these moments when you really get frustrated because the decision making is slow, or maybe someone you are reporting to or someone the person you report to is reporting to cannot understand the technical decisions that you want to make or drive the organization in a certain direction. So what happens is that, okay, you think about, okay, if I was a manager, I would do things differently. And when this situation repeats over and over, then you finally take the step and you say, okay, I think I should be a manager because I think then I can contribute better.
So while we were talking offline, you told me a very interesting story. Would you like to tell that, like your motivation towards it? I would really want to hear the details of that.
So there was actually a time when I was reporting to a very good people's manager. He really was great at managing people, but he did not have technical background. And the organization I worked in, we had different problems because the scale of the transactions was so huge. Like the normal IT education or knowledge is not enough to solve that problem of scale. So you really need someone experienced. And when I was trying to explain him a certain approach that I wanted to take, he was very much against it because that was kind of not aligned with the budgetary requirements. And then, we ended up spending a lot more money because the way he wanted to do things was not efficient. So we had to spend a lot of more money on resources and hiring more people to manage that system. And I think that's, you always have that switch where you say, okay, now I'm going to go after the engineering manager position because I think if I was the manager, I would have made a different decision. And I think that's how I switched back into management in corporate.
So why do you think, I see a lot of engineering managers are hands-on, right, with coding and program. Why do you think? I know like this is kind of like their career path that they become an engineering manager. They want to be in the tech space, but why do we specifically need sometimes hands-on experience, engineering managers when we can also have architects?
Sorry, I missed the last word.
So my question is, we can have architects. Why do we need engineering managers and hands-on?
Okay, so this is actually it's a very interesting question, and I think you can find arguments both against and for this. So the first thing is we have to understand what a manager is and what he does. So most of the engineering managers, they are actually your line managers. So what they actually are doing is they are taking all the strategic decisions from the higher management and translating them into some sort of technical requirements for the team who has to implement those strategic decisions or objectives. And it's like they are the interpreters between strategy and technical terms, and in bidirectional. Now the other part of this is, okay, why do we need these managers? Why not just have architects? And I think, again, this question I have to break it down. Architects are very focused on the architecture of systems. They are people who are engineers at heart. They are someone who love systems and things more than people. I won't say love, I would say like more interested in things and systems than people. While as a manager is someone who is interested in systems, people, and things. That's engineering manager. Why he has to be hands-on? Because he needs to make sense of a very high technical discussion that his engineering team will have. And if he cannot make sense of what people are discussing or what people are proposing, then he won't be able to lead them effectively. And he will just add to the frustration of engineering team, because engineers are people who love to talk logically.
Oh, that's true. I think it's kind of a difficult discussion. Sometimes it does become when we are working in cross-functional teams. You see, there are very technical leads, and then we have project managers or product managers, and then business stakeholders as well. So things can get become complicated for non-technical stakeholders as well. So a lot of the times you would hear in those discussions, okay, things are getting complicated. I just need to understand very high level, very basic understanding. So, are you? Is your argument to have an engineering manager is, and rather than like not rather than, but in addition to architect, is that it's possible they know basically to translate that information, very technical information, and relay it to the other non-technical stakeholders, or is it something? What's your thought on that?
So I think mixing the role of an architect with a manager is not right, uh, because an architect again is very much focused on the system. So even let's say he has the ability to relay the technical uh, design, so relay the technical design to non-technical people and get the non-technical business requirements and translate them into technical requirements for his team. There is a very specific set of skills that he needs to do uh, in order to achieve his roles objectives. Whereas a manager is not only responsible for the system, but he is also responsible for team and people in the team. He is responsible for coaching people follow a certain career path. If people have certain career aspirations, it's the manager's job to actually provide them with the opportunities to achieve their career goals within the time they want to achieve them. Then it's not only engineering that a manager has to do. A manager also has to do a lot of non-engineering tasks, like for example, from the top of my mind, he has to handle harassment issues as well, right? So there are a lot of things. So I mean, if I summarize, you will always need a manager. So it if you are having a manager for an engineering team, it should be an engineering manager rather having a people's manager.
I see. I see. So, in your opinion, what would you say is the most rewarding and be the most challenging aspect of being a engineering manager?
I think the most rewarding aspect of being an engineering manager is that it gives you the freedom to make decisions that you think will be the best for organization to achieve its goal, and not just the freedom to make decisions, but also you will have the opportunity to explain your thought process to the higher management, so you don't have a a, uh, a manager between you, your thought process, or people who think like you, and the higher management, right? So it's now you. So now you are the one who is responsible for taking inputs from very technical people, aligning all the suggestions, and then presenting it to the higher management. And most of the time, if you are logical and you can explain and present them well, you uh, get the go ahead with your proposals. And on the other side, I think, and this is also a challenge, because now you're also responsible for getting things done. And sometimes people in the higher management position who are not very technical. They cannot actually understand. I'll give you an example. I think it's better to explain. So let's say an organization like Rakuten, which has over 70 services and over 35,000 people working for it. Suddenly, someone decides in the higher management that, oh, we are going to do a BCP for all our IT infrastructure. And it just drills down to the line manager that, okay, we need your systems to be BCP compliant by the end of this year. Now, it's a humongous task. As a line manager, it is your job not only to achieve it in the time, but also to motivate your team to do something which is practically impossible to do in like a year. So I think that's something which is very challenging, but it is also very rewarding because once you achieve it, the feeling of achievement is out of this world.
That's true. That's true. I think the sense of achievement, and it's very different when you are an individual contributor and not managing somebody else, versus someone who has to not only manage their own contribution but also the people and helping them grow in the career. So now, actually, at this point, I want to bring in our next speaker, and this next speaker is very special to me because they also helped me kickstart my career, maybe more than a decade ago. So I would like to bring Tariq onto the stage. Hello, Tariq. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. I love it. We're just having a virtual brunch with you. So, Tariq, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, and I will go from here.
Great, thank you, Sarah, and hello, everyone. My name is Tariq Ahmed. I'm the one of many senior directors at New Relic. Coming up here on almost exactly 3 years now, coming up in early March. And I've had the pleasant opportunity of working on a number of various systems here at New Relic. At this point in time, the current focus that I have is our mobile applications. Really trying to find a way, like, how can we engage our users, engage our accounts, and really help drive the growth of the business through New Relic's mobile applications, as well as our API platform. So we have over 100 teams that are contributing to our APIs. And so the big challenge there is, how do we not only use those APIs to drive our own internal product, but expose that to our customers who are doing custom integrations, and doing that in a way where not only is it performance and scalable, but consistent and easy to digest, and just be able to just navigate the plethora of APIs that we have. I started my career over in Canada, which is where I'm originally from, and I started straight out of school at Bell Canada, and it was right at the time when the internet was just taking off. And so, just being really opportunistic, I found an opportunity to help lead and sort of showcase the opportunity of leveraging the web-based type technologies to drive application development. And so was really happy to roll out an education program at Bell Canada, and contributed towards Bell Canada's first instance of their website. However, I couldn't handle the cold, and I moved to California, which is where I'm currently at. And I spent some time as a software engineer over at Reuters, and then moved on to eBay. And it was the next company after that called Old Republic Home Protection. They're a home warranty company where I first moved into management. I started off as a lead engineer, but everything was in a state of crisis. The product was constantly crashing. The internal staff who used the product hated it. It was just difficult to use. And so, again, just being opportunistic, I just grabbed the entire senior leadership and executive team together and just did a workshop, and we figured out, how do we come up with a long-term game plan and a strategy to not only stabilize this thing, but really provide the not only functionality that's needed, but the needed user experience. And that's where I began my sort of brand from a leadership perspective of somebody who can drop ship into like a state of crisis and really sort of evolve a team with a set of durable processes, really sort of drive engineering excellence and operational excellence within the organization with a high degree of staff engagement, just really creating a culture where people enjoy doing what they're doing and solving interesting problems. From there, I moved on to Teletrack Navman. We were tracking 600,000 vehicles around the globe. So they're sending all this telemetry data into a multi-tenant system. And sort of a similar situation, they lost half the team prior to me joining. Just the morale was really low. And so basically came in to rescue that. And over a period of time, grew the engagement of the team from 40% to 90% and was recognized for one of the fastest turnarounds within the company, as well as how did we sort of take this legacy technology and really modernize it moving forward with a degree of release predictability and a quality control program. Because without it, what was happening is you get like there's a lot of politics that occurs of just, oh my gosh, we're not doing releases fast enough. And without that, basically every release is such a high emotional event because if you don't get what you need in that release, who knows when you're going to get the next one. And so rolling out a global agile program was a key component to that solution. To where I'm at right now, over here at New Relic, and I've had similar sorts of adventures, just sort of jumping into teams that needed help and putting in these durable processes so that you get this sort of rhythm and cadence that comes along with it. And what's interesting about New Relic is just the scale. We have about 100 engineering teams, and they're all working together. And how do you sort of solve those sort of interdependencies that come along with it? And then on the personal side, I'm an avid mountain biker. Not that I'm particularly good at it. My wife has sort of threatened that if I get into the emergency room one more time, she's going to get rid of my bike. So I have to play it on the safe side.
Okay, so I do know about your bike adventure, like how crazy you are. After I think I know a lot of people who are about that. So I think that's a really good thing, and that's a different discussion I need to have with you because I'm really motivated towards that thing. But thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's very interesting itself because a lot of people have that opportunity while they are working in the system, and I'm not really talking about these small businesses or like startups, but really corporates that need bigger organizational changes or system and processes changes that are really an opportunity for one person if they take on the responsibility to grow in their career, right? So that's how you also did it, and it's very interesting that you actually got where you are. Before I dig deeper into our question and answer, I wanted to ask what comes to your mind first when I ask you what are the two pros, what are the two cons, and what is one myth about being a director for your position?
Yeah, I think on the pro side of things, there's a level of scale of responsibility that you have in terms of being able to influence the way teams and an organization works. There's a certain vantage point that you get and a level of visibility that you're able to see from, like, if you think about it from an altitude perspective, and you can sort of capitalize on that or leverage that to really help your teams be successful. So I think if you're inherently motivated by wanting to help your teams and help teams just in general be successful, whether or not they're part of your organization or not, I think that's a huge advantage. And just the level of scale of problems that you're solving, at a director and senior director level, it's often multi-team organizational level type of problems, and they're gnarly and they're challenging and they're often not necessarily technical in nature. And so, for example, like how do you roll out a new process, organizationally? it's challenging, right? Like you got to get a lot of buy-in, and you sort of leverage a lot of leadership strengths in order to accomplish that. On the con side of things, the more you sort of grow vertically in your role, the more you're moving away from the thing that got you interested, in the industry to begin with. So, for example, for me, I've been coding since I was 10. To date myself, I started off programming on a Commodore VIC-20, for those of you who are old enough to know what that is, and just sort of self-taught and just really enjoyed, just coding, just for fun. And but as you grow in your leadership journey, you're actually moving further and further away from that sort of hands-on, like roll up your sleeves type of experience. And so here and there, where as time affords it, I try to at least expose myself to as much of that as possible. But that's definitely one of the cons. And then the other sort of challenge, being in sort of this middle tier leadership role, is this sort of balancing act, right? You're sort of balancing, and you're sort of caught between sort of meeting the needs of the team and supporting their needs, but also balancing the needs of the company, right? And what the company needs and what customers need. And so you tend to have to wear like a lot of hats, and you have to develop a lot of skills that you would have never really developed, sort of in your earlier parts of your career.
So, like, also, as I mentioned, because I was very curious about the fact that these days we are talking and we're maybe just having discussion and arguing about the fact that do we need to have middle managers at all? Do we need to have flat hierarchy? And as I also mentioned, touched on this part that you always need a manager. You can't just expect senior leaders or decision making leaders in the business sector to just go to individual people to just get what's going on. So
Sure.
how much do you agree or disagree to that point? Why would you really go for a flat hierarchy versus the other?
Yeah, really, really interesting question. And of course, it's a bit self-serving for me to advocate for the benefits of a middle tier, middle management level. I think what's important is sort of take a step back and think sort of historically. Middle management was often around the role of like information synthesizing, routing information, sort of organizing, packaging, and sort of pushing information up and down in all the different directions. And of course, any company is always trying to optimize efficiency, always trying to optimize profitability. And so since the dawn of management, there's been all sorts of experimentation around just what exactly is sort of the ideal, model. I think as a smaller company, you can definitely get away with being as flat as possible. And in general, you do want to be flat. You want to reduce, even as a funny story, when I was working at eBay, they had such a deep hierarchy. There was an engineer like literally almost beside me, and for me to talk to them required like going up the management chain and back down again in order to sort of get approval, because there's some I wouldn't say protectionism, but you're trying to shield like distraction from your teams. And so if you can get a flatter hierarchy, it improves the velocity of communication. But I think uh, what we always want to be thinking about is what problems are we trying to solve. And then as an organization gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you know you want to make sure that you're putting in the pillars of support that's needed for that engine to work. And I think what managers and leaders, one of the roles that they provide is they're the grease in the engine. You can have all the processes and all the automation in the world. At the end of the day, it's people, right? And people are creative, and people are diverse. And so, where middle management comes in is they're thinking about it from a level of scale, right? So, an engineering manager or just a manager of any particular team, they're focused on like growing their own particular staff and the execution of their priorities and the things that they need to get done. at a director and even VP level, you're thinking about just systems, right? Like how do all these teams work together in a consistent kind of way versus like independently working, on their own and coming up and reinventing the wheel when it comes to processes and standards and things along those lines. And then if you can get those economies of scale, that sort of benefits the organization at large. And as a leader, you're always trying to build up that succession pipeline. So your engineering managers are the folks who are likely to be your successors, and so you're investing in their leadership experiences so that as you move on, you've got the sort of that succession pipeline built up, and then they themselves have folks within their team that can then evolve into that management role.
Okay, so you might find it a little silly question, but what is the shortest path or a shortcut to become a director, and who do you report?
Yeah, no, you got to really sort of be thinking about taking a creative and opportunistic path. And I think the first step is you need to figure out what you're going to be known for. What kind of leader are you? What senior leadership is going to be looking for is aptitude, your leadership aptitude. So not so much on just the execution side. So the strength and the muscle that you've built up as an individual contributor in terms of like getting things done, or as an engineering manager, helping sort of coordinate a project, at a team level scale, is you're sort of thinking like, how can I capitalize on an opportunity where I either see a problem within the organization, maybe with the way they work, or a particular gap in the product or the service that's provided to customers, and come up with that vision and reach out to stakeholders, garner that buy-in, get that alignment. And if you can sort of position yourself as somebody who has that vision, who has a strategy, who can then get that stakeholder buy-in and then actually deliver, on what you've, proposed or some sort of large initiative, you want to be able to show that you're capable of operating with a higher degree of responsibility and scalability across your organization.
Okay, so I'm pretty clear on the fact that yes, we do need, especially when it comes to technology, we do need these individuals. But I want to talk about considering yourself a hiring manager, for example, right? What kind of people do you see in these roles, especially if I talk about technical management roles or engineering manager roles? If you were to bring someone in your
Mhm.
team, who would that ideal person would be? And I'm asking this question because this role is really highly sought after, and a lot of individuals in the tech industry, especially when they start their career, they think about, okay, I'm going to be a programmer, so their task is mostly about, I'm going to learn this and that new technology, but really they're themselves growing towards engineering management, and then they're like kind of like stuck. Okay, what do I need to do next? So before we dive deeper into that section, I want to know what kind of person would you see in a potential engineering manager in your team?
Yeah, I think an engineering manager, I mean, if you sort of take a step back, like what is the ultimate goal of a manager, right? It's about the people and investing in the people and growing the people. And if you can solve that, you're able to deliver solutions. You're able to drive success, not only within the team, but the things that team is responsible for. So the very first thing I look for is what is the aptitude around people management, career development, really sort of understanding almost sort of the psychological angle around like what makes people tick and how do you engage them and how do you evolve them. And I also sort of take a look at, is an engineering manager able to look at their team almost like a picture puzzle? So like most org charts, you'll see like just boxes and it just these sort of hierarchies. But the way I like to think about it is a team is a picture puzzle. Each piece is unique. And so an engineering manager, a very sort of successful one, is looking at their team almost like this picture. And how do I evolve that picture? Well, I can use hiring opportunities to fill these sort of specialized roles, or I can invest in the training and the experiences of folks in order to help fill out this picture puzzle. So I looked at the app. I looked for the aptitude around people management, engagement, just their ability to sort of grow a world-class team. The next bit around is leadership. So yeah, there's sort of the aspect of like just, do you know the technology and getting things done and all that sort of stuff. But we need people who are close to the problem to surface the opportunities there. And an engineering manager is one of the most well-suited positions to be able to go, yeah, we're like just grinding our wheels on this, whether it's a technical debt issue or some architectural problem, or just maybe some cross-organizational process issue, and being able to identify the problem statement in an articulate kind of way, but also options and the solution. And so that leadership aptitude is also a big quotient to that. Now, I have experimented with, can you get away with an engineering manager being like completely hands off, where like they don't even fully, understand the technology and what it does and how it works, and that doesn't work. You do need somebody who can also be very close to the team, that they understand what a day in the life of an engineer is, or whatever their team is responsible for. Basically, a day in the life of their ICs, and can talk the talk and really sort of roll up their sleeves when they need to help staff think through problems and help them navigate through the options and the solutions and help them basically deliver at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. So while you were answering all this, I was thinking, okay, where these thoughts are coming also from the perspective of someone who would want to see, like, who is basically evaluating, a member in the team. So at this point, I actually want to bring back Asad, and I want to see, like, I want to hear his thoughts coming from a particular person, like the person who is the aging manager, what their thoughts are. And then I have a follow up question afterwards. So, hi again, Asad. Welcome back to the stage. So, my thought, like, my question is similar, but rather towards the growth, of an engineering manager. How do you see yourself? I know, like, you were mentioning about the importance of having an engineering manager, importance of having hands-on engineering manager, and like the career path itself. But what do you see? Like, what are your thoughts, like your personal thoughts on the growth from here? Like, while you are at engineering manager, what is your career growth path that you see over here? And do you have anything to say for people who want to break that kind of like glass ceiling further away?
So I think I will take something from Tarek's points, and I think there are a few things which he put well very beautifully. One, that you have to be opportunistic, and it's not just in being a manager. It's something which is directly proportional to growth. So you have to look for the opportunities, and you have to uh, work. So it's not just, you have to look for problems. You have to look for opportunities, because the difference between opportunity and problem is that problem is something you complain about, and an opportunity is you see a problem, you think of a solution, and then you work hard to actually achieve that solution, which makes everyone's lives easy. And the other part is uh, the analogy for having a team like a puzzle. And I think that's how I thought about it, but I could never put my thoughts to words until today. Thank you, Tarek, for having that analogy, because that's exactly how an engineering manager should be. And I think keeping that puzzle in my mind, I think growth from here is similar. Like, okay, right now I have a puzzle of like maybe 52 pieces. I have to think on how to make or solve a puzzle of 500 pieces. And it's like and how do you do it? You do it by practicing and perfecting your techniques. Um, a few things which we discussed are, um, an engineering manager has to be someone who leads the growth, who leads the problem solving, who leads the team into the right direction. But I also think that he's someone who also has to handle the psychological needs of your team, because people are not machines. So they will have certain factors affecting their performance and their uh, behavior. It can be anything. So he has to actually see through it, find a solution, and help their team members. And I think when you think about growth, you as an engineering manager, I think that's the thing I would really like to improve. The other thing I would really like to work on in my growth is how to. So my first issue when I became an engineering manager was, having this transition from writing code to managing people, because you really have to context switch a lot when you are a manager. If you're a coder, you come in, you get wired, you start writing your code, you finish and you go home. But if you are an engineering manager, you're talking to product manager. Okay, now you have to think in terms of product management. Then you talk to someone who is a DBA. Oh yeah, I need to think about DBA databases and its issues. Then you go to someone who is managing your load balancers. Then you have to think about the network. So I think as an engineering manager, context switching is the most difficult thing that you do during your entire day. So, but once you have this disconnection from engineering to management, so the next step is, okay, how do I now start thinking in terms of strategic decisions for the organization that are not affected by my technical skills or my technical biases? Because as an engineer, you're always biased towards a certain technology, certain process, and that's the next step. And I think I would be looking to work towards a CTO role in I won't say near future, but in the future. That's how I mean that's where I would uh, work towards.
So I am curious, and I feel like my video is lagging, so bear with me. I'm kind of curious because all three of us have at least a decade of experience in the tech industry. And of course, you guys have way more than mine, right? But after a certain point, I had this question in my mind: now what, right? Because everything, I have been an individual contributor myself as well, right? Programming and hands-on experience. So at one point in my career, I felt like everything is same. It's just a different language, different technology, but everything is same. And it became kind of like boring. So I was deciding, okay, I need to move into management position. There are different kinds of where you are managing the project, people, and maybe products only, which is more, rewarding, more interesting. And interestingly enough, I didn't choose engineering management. I chose product management. I was looking into moving towards talking to customers who are maybe non-technical and directly uh, solving their problem. But again, I was more not just interested in product management, but more towards entrepreneurship. And in today's era, or like the recent trends that you see, that more and more young people are resorting towards entrepreneurship. Even as soon before they graduate, they're thinking about, okay, I want to start something of my own. I want to build something. I want to sell something that I built. My question to both of you, by the way, is now, why someone who has spent years and years of experience in corporate culture has never thought about resorting, or are not thinking of resorting towards entrepreneurship? Is it not boring, or does it not get boring to actually deal with the same similar faces almost every day, same issues, and like the same similar problems that you are solving? Why not entrepreneurship? So yeah, any of you can go first. Yeah. So maybe Tariq, you want to go first, and then Asad.
Yeah, sure. I actually when I was straight out of school, I attempted entrepreneurship. There were two products slash services that I had tried while I was at in my I was doing a summer internship at Bell Canada, and as this internet thing was exploding, I was like, what's the car buying experience? And basically the only way you could look at a car is to go through like physical newspapers. And I'm like, this is a horrible experience. And so I teamed up with this guy whose family owned 40 car dealerships. And at the time, like the internet just wasn't as prevalent as it was, and basically created like an autotrader.com type of experience. And we went to dealerships, and every single one of them said, yeah, no, we don't track anything online, and nobody's going to buy a car online." And I said to myself, I guess there's just no market for it. And then I tried it again. I built out a service a web hosting company basically. And at the time, internet providers were giving your own sort of free personal space, and I was basically trying to market. You could have your own company.com, and the constant messaging we were getting back is, well, no, my ISP gives me a free space, and I said to myself, oh, I guess I'm just sort of too there's no market for it. Of course, fast forward to today, these are massive opportunities, and in hindsight, I probably should have stuck with it. But what I would say is boring is the most opposite to at least my world. There is no shortage of interesting problems to solve, and I think especially as you sort of grow in your career, the problems just get more complex and broader and of much higher scale, which definitely always keeps it really, really interesting. Now, the other thing that I would also say is always follow your passion if you can. And what I've found in transitioning, to management and these leadership roles is there's this huge opportunity to be this force multiplier where, yeah, as an individual contributor, yeah, I can work 24 hours a day and I can only accomplish so much. But if you can take somebody who has this like incredible amount of like talent and aptitude and invest in them and like really help them unlock their full potential, and then imagine if you can do that on not only a team but multiple teams, you're able to like live vicariously through that force multiplying effect of like, wow, like you've got these uber talented people and what they're able to accomplish, and really sort of see the sort of the fruits of that labor. And it's I find it just incredibly rewarding to be able to like help somebody along their career path, and just the amazing thing that if you can get like a team to a world class state, just the amazing stuff, the amazing innovation that they're able to accomplish.
Okay. So I see there are a few questions in the chat, but before we can take this, I really want to hear your thoughts as on entrepreneurship and why you are sticking to corporate world.
So I think one part of your question was like, okay, don't you get bored? So I think so far I didn't have this boredom where I had to repeat similar things over and over again. For example, when in Rakuten Japan, I had the opportunity to build a meta service that helped us release a new service on our private cloud in 3 days. So just imagine releasing a new service on the cloud in 3 days with a team of 3 people. So when you are doing something which is futuristic and has not been attempted, and you cannot find any similar open source or paid tool, then you keep enjoying your work. At the end, yes, you have to use the same languages, maybe same techniques, same databases, but the problems you solve are different. And as long as the problems you are solving are different, you keep enjoying, and you don't think about entrepreneurship. But that's a different thing. I have been thinking about entrepreneurship, but I always wanted to work in corporate until the age of 45, because you learn a lot in corporate world. You have people who are great leaders. They give you a lot of free coaching, about the processes, how to expand the business, how to make difficult business decisions. I'm sure Tariq has had to make some of the most difficult decisions when it comes to cost cutting. So those decisions are not good and easy, especially when it's about people's life. And I think that's what I'm doing right now. I'm learning, and what I think I am on track to be an entrepreneur by the age of 45.
Okay, good luck with that. I'm super happy to hear that as well. I'm also it's a very difficult journey, obviously, and a very long journey, and it's all about consistency, not really about what's great, what the idea is great, which idea is great, basically. But yeah, definitely we'll cover in one of the upcoming webinars the entrepreneurship and moving towards that. But now we have two questions, so I would rather want to take those questions. So Akif has a question that says, "What is the?" And he has a question for both panelists. And what is the best way to stick out from other applicants in leadership, first of all, and engineering role? And then there is the second part to the question, which is what are the key top three technical leadership skills you are looking for? Okay, so, and also, are there any certifications you recommend? So I think we can go with A, B, and C first. So maybe Asad, if you want to go first, and then Tariq, you can go afterwards.
Okay, so I think when it comes to sticking out for applications, I think if I'm looking for to hire an engineering manager, the thing I would look in resume is the achievement-based resume. So let's say if you are an applicant who wants to apply for an engineering role, you should not make a resume that tells you, okay, I'm experienced in using this tech or experienced in this or experienced in, writing code. You should mention what have you achieved, either as an individual contributor or as a team member, or maybe, some sort of middle manager, because that's what I would like to see in my manager, that what is his ability to get things done to achieve something. And uh, if he cannot present his achievements properly, I won't be able to judge him properly, because we don't have enough time when we are screening resumes to actually understand what the person is actually trying to explain. So it's just like you take people on the face value when you are screening resumes. Now, about the three technical or leadership skills, I think when you talk about engineering management, you're already technical. You already have certain technical skills. That's why you are thinking about being an engineering manager. It means like you have been an engineer for quite some time. So you do have, uh, I would say, most of the required skills. But you need to acquire people skills or soft skills. You need to understand how to read through people's issues. You need to understand how to I would say you need to have empathy. You have to listen. One of the issues, I mean, if I've been an engineer for a very long time, I think as an engineer there were times when I was very arrogant and I lacked empathy. And it's not because I'm a bad person, it's because how my mind is trained. Logical minds normally lack empathy, and we like to be arrogant at times. So I think these are the things, if you want to be successful in a leadership role in engineering, these are the things you need to work on. It's more like people skill. Yeah, but I think that's my take on it.
Yeah, and sorry if I can add on to that. Definitely concur. A lot of problems that I see in whether it's internal or external applications is a list of duties and or a list of experiences. What's more important, especially when you're going for like higher level positions, is accomplishments. So not that you've sort of coded, a flux capacitor and implemented an R2D2. What's more important is what was the outcome of those things? And when you can, more importantly, is tie those accomplishments to business outcomes. How did that affect revenue growth or profitability or user retention or user engagement, just any sort of like metrics that matter to the business. You need to sort of help connect the dots for the audience that's reading, that application. But also internally, like you always need to be thinking about what is your key differentiator. So, like, often a company, when they're opening up a new position, they're open to internal applicants as well. And so you need to be thinking about what is my personal brand, and what that means is think of any brand, Tesla, Coke, Pepsi, wherever. Like they all have brands, and they're all marketing themselves. And so you need to be thinking about how do you market yourself as well. One of the best advices that I've got, when I was at eBay as a developer, there was a senior director, and he made this comment of sometimes you just have to toot your own horn, like really sort of like amplify like your accomplishments and why that mattered and what the outcomes were. And so people are able to sort of associate like, oh yeah, here's an individual who's been able to accomplish certain things and how it helped the business. So some of the like skills or like just qualities that really need to sort of come out in your brand and in your applications is the accomplishments and the effects that you're able to have, anything that you can do around vision, strategy, and critical thinking. So where you sort of saw opportunities, how you identified an initiative, and how you moved those things forward. Basically, at a leadership level or more senior level type roles, is you're not a task taker. There's this expectation that you're the one that's going to like help identify like where as a team, as a group, as an organization are the opportunities and what should we be pushing forward.
And so there's one more question, which says, are there any certification that you would want to recommend?
This on a leadership level, I wouldn't say so, but I think you always need to be a lifelong student. And so, I mean, for me, like I listen to all sorts of podcasts on the topic of leadership and YouTube channels and things like that. There's just, like the thing about like, unlike engineering, well, I mean, you always want to be learning on the engineering side as well. There's just so much changing in the technology space. But leadership and management is almost like having a tool chest. And what technique you used in one scenario isn't necessarily going to work in another scenario. So a lot of it is just building up your tool chest of various techniques that you can apply, on a given, situation, and being able to sort of very rapid fire cycle through different tools and techniques until you find what works in a particular given situation. And so I find just studying and just always learning about just leadership ideas and practices and techniques helps you build up that tool chest.
Okay, thank you for answering this, Tariq and Asad. We have another question. So it's by Furkan. Furkan says, with the recent developments in AI, artificial intelligence area, companies or startups believe that they need more individual contributors rather than middle managers. So again, I think this relating to flat hierarchy versus the hierarchical organization. They think that AI can manage engineers and their day-to-day tasks, so they don't need people or middle managers. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. Now, what I would say to the audience is show of hands, who wants to work for AI? I don't think there'll be any. But sort of joking aside, technology is inherently deflationary. Technology has always allowed people to do more with less. And so, if there's a way to automate and optimize something that is, particularly if it's repeatable, that allows one person to do what previously took 5 people to do, yeah, of course you're going to use technology to, optimize your efficiencies. And I'm quite sure that, since the dawn of time, we've always been sort of experimenting around like just hierarchical models and how can we leverage technology to improve those sorts of efficiencies. But as I was saying a bit earlier, that sort of middle management role, or just management in general, like historically has been a lot around like command and control and information synthesizing and routing. But that role has significantly evolved over the last 10, 20 years, and I think it continues and needs to evolve in that what do people want out of that role. And so for any company that does try to go all in with AI management, I would say you're automatically giving an advantage as a trade-off to companies that are investing in a human-centric culture. So when it comes to knowledge workers, this is a very sort of creative kind of space, and you need to be building up a level of leadership layers that allows you to sort of grow these knowledge workers and these creative types. It's not like just building a brick wall and laying down bricks in a repeatable kind of process that a robot could do, but it's more around creative problem solving and different ways you can solve those particular problems. So what people want is they want visionaries, they want coaches, they want mentors, and humans are just incredibly complex and dynamic, and that's what makes it so fun to work in a team. And that's where an engineering manager is so incredibly valuable, is just understanding how people work and how to create the right combinations of people. And then that middle layer is all about how do you scale that out, so that you're putting in these durable processes across the entire organization. And sort of a key difference between leaders and those who lead, which is sort of a phrase from Simon Sinek, who is an amazing speaker on the topic of leadership, is followership. When it comes to followers, people choose who they decide to follow. And so that's where leadership comes in so valuable, is if you have that vision and that direction, you're inherently going to garner that followership from the people who want to follow you in the direction that you want to go. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if companies are able to pull this off. But I think the drawback and the trade-off of that is you're building a culture and an organization that is heavily invested in just pure execution, which some of that might be automatable from an information and synthesizing perspective. But the investment of people, an AI coach, that'll be interesting to see if we can ever actually get there. And then if you flatten out the organization too broadly, you'll basically have a ratio of like 40 managers to 1 VP, which I guarantee you there's no one-on-ones happening, there's no career development happening. And then there's this massive jump to go from a manager to a VP. And so how are you building your leadership pipeline to be able to eventually even get there? And so you create this massive chasm, between those two layers. So yeah, that's my take on things.
That was very interesting way to see this and explain this. I'm sure, Rakan, you might have gotten your answer why we need that. But I see you smiling there. Do you have any input on that? What are your thoughts about it?
It's very rare that you agree 100% with someone's opinion, and I actually do agree with Tariq's opinion on this. And I think I'll just like to add on, machines lack empathy, right? That's why we have people. And AI system won't be able to put itself into people's shoes to understand the situation. And I mean, besides having the leadership pipeline, or coaching and mentoring, I think this is also one of the most important role that engineering managers do, is that they put themselves in the people's shoes, and try to find the best solution for any given situation. And that's how they become leader, or become effective leader, or that's how they get followers. So I think that's my take on it. I don't think AI or machine learning can replace middle level managers.
Okay, so I can safely say, I said your job is safe. AI cannot replace you.
I would like to think so.
Okay,
But
so I have,
sorry,
yeah,
if I
sorry.
could quickly add one a little bit, I think also at the same time, as leaders, we always got to be thinking about reinventing ourselves, and how does the evolution of the role change over time. And so, yeah, if we can leverage technology to automate certain aspects of it, it frees yourself up to focus on other aspects, of the organization. And so I just let's go back to like just what is your brand? What are you known for? And what kinds of hats can you wear? And what other opportunities are you, subsequently freed up to be able to do if certain things can be automated through AI, but just even in general, just as as a society, as an industry, things are constantly changing, and so you always want to be just highly versatile and highly adaptive to just how things evolve over time.
That's true. So now we are a bit over time, and I love the discussion, but I really want to ask this question, and this question goes to both of you. Tariq, you have worked in North America, you have worked in Canada and America, right? America is more advanced. And Asad, you have worked in Pakistan, and you have also worked in Japan, which is also very advanced, and now you are in Canada. My question to you is, in the tech world, right? You might have gone through multiple, hiring processes of different people, like individuals, right? Now we are not even specifically talking about managers. Why do we see so much gender disparity in the tech, especially in these critical roles and these individual contributor roles, technical roles? And why do we see less and less women, even though there are many support programs available? I, for one, am a women in tech, and I've seen that up close. So I did my own research. I have my own reasons, but I really want to know your both of your thoughts about on this topic.
Okay, so I think the reason that we don't have enough female identifying people in tech is not because of any bias, it's because we don't have a lot of applicants. So during my 17 years, as an hiring manager, I think I only had like six applicants, and out of six, we hired five, and all five of them were superb engineers. So, but the reason I think is uh, there are a lot of other fields which are more interesting to women than IT. But I mean, I don't have a lot of insights on why they are not trying to join the field, but I know that there are not enough applicants. That's why we don't see a lot of them in the field.
I want to add in one more thing, and I then want to jump to Tariq. I had a very similar question when I was working in my team, and I was the only or one of the two female engineers, and I was constantly telling my managers, "Why don't you hire more females? Okay, get more female in my team." And they were saying, because I was also biased towards them, that maybe they are preferring and they are not like interviewing female applicants. And so they said, like, okay, I have opened everything. It's not that most of the time it's not the bias, right? Most of the time it's just that the ratio of applicants is very small. So we don't get the kind of the applicants that we are looking for, and are also female. So sometimes they have to go overboard, and then okay, we're only hiring for female or something like that. So that was kind of like a shocking revelation for me first, and that's one of the reasons why I embarked on the journey to kind of like bring women like awareness how interesting tech could be. But before I could get dive into that topic, I really want to know, like, Tariq, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely concur. I mean, one of the, if we go back like 20, 30 years ago when this whole sort of industry was really bursting out. It wasn't very initially. I mean, it attracted sort of a narrow audience, uh, of applicants and people into sort of that computer science type of industry. And there's a lot of stigma and perceptions around the types of like just hardcore coders and whatever you perceive that to be. And then you also in the media, like any sort of movie that portrayed like a hardcore hacker was always this sort of like nerdy kind of guy or whatever. And I think that was pretty off-putting, for a diverse set of folks that were going into just sort of thinking about their career paths. But I think fortunately over time, I would say over the last 10, 15 years, these sort of perceptions have been breaking down. Technology has just become so commonplace. Like you literally use technology for like everything. It's almost in every industry. There has to be some element of technology. And so I think because it's become so norm that we are now getting this generation of a much more diverse set of students who are going into the computer science realm. And I think another thing that's been pretty unique about this industry is this concept of coding camps. And so you don't have to necessarily go through like a 4-year plus type program. There's now these like 3-month programs or 6-month programs, and it gives you sort of a really low barrier to entry to experiment to see if it's something that's of interest to you. Now, from a hiring side, yeah, you're at the end of the day limited to the pool of applicants that are interested in working for you. So I think some short-term tactical things that you can do as a company is make sure that you're not only developing a very strong internal program and practice and culture that attracts a diverse set of employees, but that then exudes and becomes externalized throughout the engineering community. So if a company has a very strong female or diverse community of engineering practice, within that company, they themselves are actually pushing that word out of like what it's like to work for your company and the strong level of support that they have. And doing things like visiting whether it's coding schools or on-campus recruiting events, and things like things like that to really sort of get the word out that like, yeah, we really value diversity and we're just doing everything within our power to do that. Another thing that you can do, and something that we do, is we use tools that allow us to analyze the language and the tone of our job postings. And so, for example, like a general sort of default that male-driven job requirements will have is it tends to be militaristic. So we will conquer these things, and we're looking for warriors, and we're going to go to battle and solve something or whatever. And that's sort of generally off-putting to a diverse audience. And so, using tools to sort of measure like what kind of audience does your tone resonate with helps you sort of calibrate and balance, your the audience that you're trying to attract. And then another thing, that we have over at New Relic is we have a very strong internship program and another program called Ignite, which allows people to, early career engineers to do sort of a tour of various different roles within our engineering organization, and it gives you sort of a sense of like, is this culturally a place that I can see myself being at for a very long period of time? And then culturally, from all of us, the three of us here are hosting the call. We come from obviously an Asian type background, and that culturally has a lot of like norms and sort of stigma associated with it, where like growing up you have like two options: you can be an engineer or a doctor, and then gender based sort of preconceptions as to what your roles should be. But I think that's all sort of breaking down now, and we're now able to sort of see that, yeah, like, it's really more about just what are your passions, what are your interests, and how do we sort of encourage, our younger generations to explore these more sort of engineering centric type of roles. And it's not just a bunch of like hardcore hackers, in a dark room coding away, and that it's actually far more collaborative, it's super creative, and it's knowledge work.
I think it is very important for people. How I see engineering is very creative role, and not many people see it like that,
Yeah.
right? And it can be so fulfilling. A lot of youngsters who are going towards engineering, sometimes they're moving with the trend, right? Okay, now it's a trend for entrepreneurship, so I want to be an entrepreneur. Now it's a trend for social media, so I want to have a social media account. And sometimes what happens is, okay, everybody is going towards engineering, so I want to go towards engineering. And most of the times they don't know their own goals, like why I want to be an engineer. And so many times what happens is, when the first few years they don't really understand what would be the most fulfilling part of having that tech background would be, and so they would want to drop out or something. And I'm really talking about young minds and youngsters who have never been in the professional world or have faced the world. So do you have, I know like we are a bit over time, and I want to close our session with this very last thought, and if you can shed your light on the youngsters who are having second thoughts about whether to not go for engineering, or what would tech bring to me if I go for tech education.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the advantage that tech has is that it's pretty easy to sort of tip your toe in the water to see if it's right for you. So it doesn't require a whole lot of investment or any sort of special equipment or anything. Like, it's literally free to try. There's so much knowledge that's free, on the internet, where you can just go through like a bunch of like sample courses, udemy.com, things like that, where, or YouTube just has like endless tutorials on like just from scratch, like not knowing anything about like how to code. Let's build a simple application and sort of just step by step and get a feel for what that's all about. Part two, I would say, is network. So find colleagues, friends, peers, somebody who knows somebody, relatives, who are in the industry, and have them sort of share what a day in their life is like. So, like, to your point, Sarah, I think the big sort, especially even for me, like when I was young, a million years ago. I almost didn't go into technology, even though I'd been like coding at the age of 10. When I was in high school, I started taking some computer courses thinking, yeah, this is my thing. And it was nothing but like numerical analysis and all this sort of like computational, math. And I'm like, wow, this is like super boring. This is like totally not for me. And I started looking towards like business courses. And it was my dad, fortunately, he was like, hey, you've been in computers, like that's just totally your thing. Like just stick with it. And fortunately found out that, yeah, like software engineering is actually far more closer to being an artist than it is, just being like just some number crunching type of role. And not that there's anything wrong with that if that's what your passion is. But yeah, I think just sort of this realization that creating code is far more artistic than you'd realize.
True, true. And that's what I remember, you were talking about, how much you love more when you were, creating codes than and being manager when you have other people to manage, right? And you are not really focused on building something. So I want to know also your thoughts about it, because when you started your career, like why did you shift towards software engineering, for example? And is there any advice, to for the youngsters?
So for me, it was pretty straightforward. I think one of the things which Tarek mentioned put some people off, like seeing these nerdy guys in the movies, and I think that was something that made me interested in computing or someone who can write code, and that's how I got into it. So I spoke about it with my father, and he said, "Okay, yeah, just go for it, and just go for it." And I just went for it, and it has been fulfilling. But again, I think back then when we were in the university, there was no way to actually tiptoe in IT without getting enrolled into a university program. And when you realize that you don't like it, it's already too late. And I think back then educational institutions were not that liberal. Like, for example, you have certain age to do certain things, and you could not opt out and then opt it into something else, or you cannot have multiple uh, courses, and then you can choose after 2 or 3 semester. Okay, I want to do engineering, or I want to do medicine, and you did not have the opportunity to do this after a year or two. So it was okay. Now I am in this, so I have to do this, right? But I never had complaint. But I saw a lot of people in my class struggle when it came to computing. I personally struggled with calculus. I never liked it, and I was thinking, okay, man, where am I going to use calculus in computing? But I had to study, right? And I think one the people who struggled the most were one who did not do proper research in what they are going to study during this course, or what are they going to two, they could not find out the impact, or they could not visualize the impact that they will have on society once they have the skills acquired through this course. And three, there are people, again, now comes back to art and science. Coding is an art, and coding is a science. So you are a scientific artist, right? So you really need to have this aptitude and liking towards both art and science, and logically presenting your artistic idea into binary.
Binary codes. That's
Yeah,
right. It's a computer language. So, Tariq and Asad, thank you so much for joining me today. It was great, and I feel like I was so immersed that I forgot to buy coffee. It's kind of like cold now. But so much. I hope that you also enjoyed having this discussion. And our audience also got a lot from your insight. And thank you very much, and everybody for listening. And if there is anything that you are looking into, you want to bring people on board, there are other job roles, please reach out to me, and then I will bring people on board and you can have live questions answered. So thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.
thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Catch y'all later. Thanks. Bye.